Okay, well, I think we're live. Hey, well, welcome everyone to today. For those in the group, and there'll be others that will come online soon. It's only just gone 12. Steve, actually, why don't we pray? Just commit this time to God.
Great idea.
Yeah. Father, thank you that at times like this, you speak louder and more clearly. Lord, attune our ears to what you have for us, guide us and lead us and direct us and empower us. Lord, be with Steve as he shares. Lord, Lord, we're asking for answers today to what you have for us. Bless this time, bless those that tune in either on Zoom or face to face on Facebook Live. Bless each one in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, Steve, you and I have known each other for a long time.
Mm.
it's,
Yeah, that's right.
it's it's like an old friend coming home to dinner.
Hmm.
This is great. So, Steve, tell us a bit about your journey, how you came to be a business coach, and what's your business and things.
Great. I guess the Reader's Digest version is that I never imagined in my wildest dreams when I was back in my 20s and 30s that I'd be coaching business owners, but God had other plans. And so each time when I'd been in a particular role for about 7 years, I'd get itchy feet and God had moved me into the next thing. And it's only in hindsight that I can see how my whole career through general insurance and then into the book trade, and then from there into back into the finance realm as a business development manager for an investment fund, and then launching an investment fund, a boutique investment fund. And it was while I was doing that I really got itchy feet at about the 2.5 year point, and really was being nudged to get into my own business, and resisted that for a while, but you in the end have to give in, and was looking around for a suitable business, knowing that I didn't want to have a mowing run or a fish and chip shop or anything like that, and stumbled across Action International, as it was in those days, who were recruiting franchisees for a new business that they called business coaching. And that was in 1999. So I started as a business coach last century, and been coaching businesses now for almost 21 years. So, and have to say that all that I had learnt, mostly by trial and error and the hard way, coupled with what I have since studied and learnt through being a business coach, um, has meant that I enjoy helping business owners to get on top of whatever issues they're having. Most of the issues have their roots between our ears, and so clearing our negative beliefs and our head trash, which I've had plenty of and occasionally still do, is the way to be able to do what we need to do so that we can have what we need to have. So that's the short version of why I'm sitting here today.
That's great, Steve. I just want to encourage everyone, if you, as we go along, please feel free to put questions and things in the chat on the Zoom or on Facebook Live, and I'll pick those up. Steve, you're a very mild mannered guy,
Yes.
but at the same time, you know what it is you're called to do, and you're very good at getting results.
Mm.
And you work with a number of different businesses. Do you want to share some of the different types of businesses you've worked with over the years?
Okay. Well, two of my biggest successes by far, and they're not my successes, they're the successes of my clients, but I was able to help them to achieve that success. And that's my paradigm behind the coaching, helping people to go way above what they ever thought was possible. One was a farmer who I never thought I'd coach a farmer, but he'd been making an operating profit of about $250 million a year. for a number of years in his different operations. He just bought another farm that was a different crop, I suppose is the best way to describe it. And things got rather out of control. But the short version of the story was able to help him to see himself as an entrepreneur, a business owner, not just, I'm just a farmer, Steve. Biggest challenge was getting him out of the driver's seat of the tractor and to work on his business. So in the first year of coaching, he produced a profit in his businesses of over $1.5 million. And so that was quite remarkable. But another business that was importing a product into Australia, two guys in partnership, and they were turning over $6 million a year, barely making any measurable pre-tax profit, paying themselves wages, but nowhere near enough. And again, in the first year of coaching, brought in a profit of $1.3 million. And that set those guys up as well to grow their business, coached them for 10 years all told, until they sold the business for multi-million dollars and retired. So I've got manufacturing businesses at the moment, professional services businesses, not a lot of retail for some reason. Maybe they think they know what they're doing, I'm not sure. But yeah, see, as a coach, and action coaches generally are like this, we're generalists, not specialists, because we have distilled the essential framework of a business to a level that business owners can easily understand, because every business on the planet operates on the same basic chassis, for want of a better word. And it's a question of how you apply that to the particular industry. So that's, and it certainly adds to my my knowledge and my accumulated experience working with businesses right across the whole spectrum.
Steve, I know you've got some stuff that you want to take us through today, but what are you seeing generally as you're talking to your clients and things now, and what you're picking up? Because no doubt through the Action Network, you're seeing some things as well.
Yes, well, there's a lot of people putting their hand up and asking for coaching across the globe. And of course, Action now's got over 1,000 franchisees in 84 countries, I think, at the last count. And most of those countries, to one extent or another, are caught up in this. But yeah, there's a greater willingness to ask for help. What am I seeing specifically, and from what I hear from other coaches, it's a very mixed bag. There's some businesses for whom this is an incredible opportunity, and there's others that have virtually had to close the doors. Out of my own current clients, there's only one business that has been directly affected in a negative way, and that's my migration agent client, with the borders closed. But he's finding that there's quite a lot of his past clients who are at the point where they ought to be moving forward with their citizenship in Australia. They're here on a visa and they should be applying for permanent residency. So that's a very obvious opportunity for him. But I'm hearing stories from my clients that are absolutely mind-blowing. A little retail store in the main street of Mergen that sells pet food and pet supplies, a bit of a cross between pet food and produce store. And 2 weeks ago, they had their biggest ever trading week in business, by a considerable margin, as in the money that was banked for the sales that week. That's probably an extreme example. My manufacturing business, their main product is they make car carriers that it's mostly sole trader type clients that have contracts to move vehicles around for car hire companies and for importers of vehicles. they had a particularly bad month in January, but in December and January, but in February, their business absolutely took off. And lots of times I'm just scratching my head and I can't understand the logic of it. But yeah, it's a mixed bag, in short.
Yeah. And I think that's what's happening around the place as well. So I'm not surprised by that. Well, Steve, you sent me through a let me bring this up here. You sent me through a graphic that I think you wanted to take us through.
Yes, well, I'm not going to go through it in a lot of detail because I want to allow plenty of time for questions. But what I've discovered in earlier downturns like this, particularly the GFC, was that business owners get intimidated. The media is bombarding us all the time, and it's hard to see where we are and where we ought to be going. And so this little graphic, and if anybody would like a copy of it, they can either email you or contact me. It's not meant to be necessarily completely exhaustive. The main purpose is for you to see that there's various phases here. And on the left-hand side, you are here where that yellow star is. We're either in lockdown or not far off it. That is phase one of a journey that we're all on. And then phase two is training. We need to upskill. We need to look at what's involved in that particular phase. Phase three, warming up, ready for when the curtain goes up on the next act. And then phase four is when the lockdown ends, basically, and we're supposedly back to normal and being ready to sprint. What should our focus be at that point? And finally, phase five, compete and grow. So it was one of my fellow coaches in the UK that initially put this together and has shared it for us. And the beauty of it is it combines the personal on the top area and the business at the bottom. So the key things out of all of that are our personal mindset and our personal care, looking after ourselves. I was on a Zoom type YouTube thing last night, I think it was, where the guy being interviewed was sharing some of his history in the marine area as working on a ship that had 81 crew. And because they couldn't dock at a particular port and the water was too deep for them to anchor, they had to drift. And when they were drifting, there wasn't much for anybody to do. And what he observed as a young seaman was how after 3 days, the crew just lost the plot. It was like they went troppo. They were still being paid. There was no question about their financial situation, but they were idle and they went troppo. And I think that really struck me. We have to take action that will avoid us going into that kind of mindset and behaving irrationally. So that's the personal part for phase one. Looking after staff, I believe that I'm really amazed at the generosity of my employer clients and the way that they bend over backwards to look after staff. We're now being helped a good deal by the federal government in that sense, and so that's very encouraging to make sure that we take action to, if we qualify, to receive that assistance, which is specifically for the payroll. Obviously, the business finances, this has brought into sharp focus for a lot of my clients that they're having a wake-up call. Hey, my accountant's asleep at the wheel. And so I can see this as a huge opportunity for proactive accountants to help people. And I see quite a number of the accountants in my network doing that, and really doing a lot of it pro bono, not heavy marketing, but helping people. And then phase two, just quickly, a personal skills audit, having a look at what your own strengths and weaknesses are. This is a good opportunity to do that. There are several online tools that you can use to to get a clearer picture of your particular skills and behavioural profiles. Business coaching, we had to throw that one in there, but it is very relevant. And bear in mind that business coaching is 80% about you, the business owner, and 20% about the business. And it's working on yourself as well as your business that is the most critical thing right now. Down in the business area for phase 2, those bullet points there are essentially a business plan. So tomorrow, actually, I'm doing a whole day Zoom exercise with a number of my clients. If anybody would like to get on that, let me know, because there are a couple of spots still available, but it will take you from 8:30 in the morning through till probably 5 in the evening. But yeah, we don't like doing business plans. I've never had a client yet who got excited when I said we ought to do a business plan. But then by the time we're halfway through the business plan, they're really getting excited. I didn't know all this was in a business plan, Steve. This is hard. I have to think about all sorts of things. And part of that, and I just wrote a little note on my copy of that graphic, a SWOT analysis, which again is part of a business plan. So even if we don't do a business plan, to actually get a notepad and go through and list the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats right now. And then you can look at what action to take to lessen the effect of the weaknesses and and the threats, and what action to take to tap into the opportunities. In phase 3,
Steve, I'm going to interrupt you because Grant, you had a question here.
Yeah.
Do you want to unmute yourself?
Sure.
Yeah,
sure. It's something that goes on a bit with my theory with all this, and from talking to a lot of people, I noticed that you've got, marketing strategies in the training section, and then ramp up marketing in the warming up, etc.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you be continuing marketing now? Why wouldn't you still be pushing it? Why even to a certain extent, why would you cut it back in, to be honest? And I know every business is different, but I think now, especially while people are almost not doing much and things like that, and there's probably a lot of strategy out there and how we're going to do this going forward, why wouldn't you take advantage of that?
Yeah, look, excellent point, Grant. As I said, this isn't by any means exhaustive or cast in stone. Yes, you need to at least maintain marketing that you're doing, and where the opportunities are, definitely ramp it up. That was basically Jerry Harvey's strategy for getting through the GFC. When everybody else was cutting their budgets, he was just pouring money into marketing, and it positioned Harvey Norman to take off quicker when the doom and gloom lessened. So yeah, good point, Grant. Keep your marketing going. It's a good opportunity though in the training area to look at other marketing strategies that you haven't used. It's amazing to me how many times a client, when I ask them the question, what was your most effective marketing strategy that you've ever used? And they'll think for a minute and say, oh, it was such and such. It was a particular email, or it was a letterbox drop, or whatever it was. Well, when did you do that? Oh, crumbs, Steve, it must have been about 5 or 6 years ago. And you got a good result. Oh, we were run off our feet. And I say to them, so you've done it again since then? No. So BFO, blinding flash of the obvious. Think back to what worked in the past, because in 21 years nearly of coaching business owners, I've observed that there's like a cycle that goes on, and strategies come and go. The effectiveness of strategies comes and goes. So test and measure what is working, stop what isn't producing the result, and ramp up what is. Good point, Grant. Thanks for that. That was very applicable.
Steve, I just want to labor on this point a bit too. I think one of the key things is presence at the moment.
Yes.
Like in terms of people need to be seeing, even if you are in lockdown, is to keep up the Facebook posts, to keep up the connection with people, to email your customers and saying, we're not going away. Yes, we've had to revamp. Maybe you're a coffee shop that's or a restaurant, I don't know, a business that's had to close its doors for some reason at the moment because you've been shut down.
Yeah.
But to keep in contact with your clients, keep top of mind awareness with them and things as well. Yeah.
Look, it'll be, again, that'll be a big area of learning for a lot of businesses, really, because the question that I ask and get blank looks lots of the time is, so tell me what form your client database is in. And sometimes it's like, what do you mean, Steve? Well, you collect people's names, addresses, mobile phone numbers, don't you? They're clients of yours so that you can communicate with them. And they have another blinding flash of the obvious. Oh, maybe I should be doing that. It's for times like this that it becomes absolutely critical to have that kind of data on your clients. Or they'll have them in, some of them have their clients in Xero, but have never done anything about using the facilities associated with Xero to communicate with people. Yep, all good points. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, we're on the warming up. The default diary is an interesting one. I hadn't heard about that till I joined the Action Network. What they're really talking about there is an ideal week, creating an ideal week. And you can change it as often as you need to. You might need to map out in your diary or in a template of a week, what are the big rocks? Put in blocks of time where you'll work on the big blocks of things that you've got to work, the really important things like marketing and stuff like that, or creating your business plan. And you don't have to fill every working hour or every hour in your typical week. But you need to make sure that you have appointments with yourself. One of the things that transformed my efficiency in a work situation specifically, many years ago, I went to a World Vision time management course that the boss paid for, and I was in my 30s at the time. And one of the things they taught us was have appointments with yourself. If you look at the typical person's diary, they've got appointments with all sorts of people in there, but they never thought to make an appointment with themselves to do things that they need to do for themselves or for the business. So don't get tricked up by the word default diary. The mindset thing is a recurring one, but preparing mentally for the sprint phase, starting to picture mentally what that is going to look like for you. When the curtain comes up, what are you going to be doing to engage with the audience? Down in the business area, the staff return, yes. Now is an opportunity, of course, to restructure the staff that you have or how the staff actually work and interact with one another. Redesign your business from that perspective. There's the ramp up marketing that Grant was talking about. Differentiate yourself from other people, and there's so many ways to do that, and lots of times it's things that we take for granted. So maybe brainstorm with a couple of your clients. What is it that is different about us that makes you keep coming back to us? And look for those opportunities. The sprint phase, the curtain's gone up. Now you've got to have enough energy and clarity. You've got to be able to focus, and you're really taking ownership, and then in business sense, leading from the front, leading your industry. My building surveying client who's got offices in most Australian states, that's really relevant for them. They've actually signed up. They do a lot of commercial work, and they've actually signed up a pile of work that needs to be done in the next 3 months. I've been absolutely amazed. Testing and measuring, that ought to be a constant. Hopefully there's a lot of things that we'll put in place now that will, in the future, give us a firewall that will give us some proof against being hit for 6 unexpectedly in the future. Compete and grow, that's the exciting part. consistency. I'm not sure about the balance. Sometimes work-life balance is a bit of a misnomer. Sometimes we have to spend a bit of time out of balance to give priority to specific areas. And that's where the ideal week comes into play, because you have to have some personal and fun things in your ideal week, irrespective of how much pressure you might be under in a specific area, or might have to give attention to a specific area. Then it's just in the business, continuous improvement, particularly systems and processes. That's actually one of the things that my building surveying client's doing right now. He's flowcharting the whole process from when they receive an inquiry for a fee proposal through to when the invoice is paid. That's always a very enlightening exercise. In his case, he can't fit it all in the one flow chart, so he's going to have ancillary flow charts for the marketing side of it and how different parts of that actually happen. Growth plans, yes, your business plan, you ought to be thinking when you're doing that planning, you ought to be planning ahead for 5 years. What results, what goals do you want to achieve in the next 12 months and every 12 months for the next 5 years? So that you end up with the words at the bottom of the compete and grow, a profitable commercial enterprise that works without you. So any other questions about that?
Steve, I might just take you back a bit to, and I almost interrupted you there, but yeah. Now is a perfect time to actually be rethinking and restructuring the business.
Yeah.
Because people have some, depending on who you're talking to at the moment, they're already like, I mean, I know my time is just, my workload has increased something chronic, which is really good, but it's, others may have quietened down, but it is a key time to stop and think, because at the same time, I'm not, we're not traveling as much, we're not out and about as much. We may have, maybe turn off a movie and don't watch a movie tonight, sit down and dream about your business.
Watch a movie to unwind and have a laugh, because laughter is very important right now.
Yes.
I'm telling the clients that. Get more laughter into your life. It releases the endorphins. It will keep you mentally alert and on top of things. So yeah, that's important. But then block out some time to actually look at what the design of your business, what's the plan of your business. See, that was one of the other key points that I wanted to make sure that I covered. So it's pretty relevant right now. As business owner, very often we're building our business without having drawn up the plans for it. So we're literally flying by the seat of our pants. We have a few good ideas and we start doing things, and we're very action focused, but we don't actually have a plan. And not everybody has to have a 47-page formal business plan, because most of them are not looked at after they're done anyway. But you need to actually, on paper, preferably on paper actually, rather than in a computer program, create the plan for your business, at least in outline form on paper, because your product is the business. It's not what you sell.
Okay, so let's camp on that for a moment. I'm actually going to stop sharing this for a moment. So
yeah,
let's camp on that, because there's a very interesting statement. Your product is the business, not what you sell.
Yes.
So explain that a bit, Steve. I think I know what you mean, but I want to hear it from you.
Okay, so this is always a challenge to help people get their heads around. But the bottom line is that if you don't design your own business, your clients and your staff will design it for you. And you won't like their design. You'll be running around in circles in areas that you shouldn't have to be involved in, because you didn't design it. See, and a very simple graphic, if people have got, we don't need to go and try and find it now, but a very simple graphic that we use to explain this is hopefully everybody's got a writing pad. And if you can't, just imagine this in your imagination. At the top of the page, write owner. That's you. Then go across to the right-hand side of the page and write team. That's the people that work for you in whatever capacity or form that is. Team. That's on the right-hand side. Now go down the bottom. You don't have to go to the bottom of the page if you're on an A4 pad, but below that, in a kind of a circle, write customers. Okay, then over on the left-hand side, about on the same line as you wrote team, write business. Now this is called a cycle of business. Now with your pen, draw a kind of a semicircular or an arc arrow from owner down towards team. See, you as the owner, you have to focus on the team. That you need to invest your time in your team. You need to recruit the right people. You need to make sure they've got the right training. You need to encourage them. You need to manage them. You need to lead them. That's your primary thing as a business owner, because nobody else is going to do that for you. If you haven't determined the culture that you want for the business, for your business, then they'll make up their own culture. So you have to work with your team consistently and systematically to get them. It's like the skipper of a yacht. How much training do they do? And they train in all sorts of things. I think one of the most important is how not to fall overboard. But you've got to focus on your team and get them up to speed, because what you're asking them to do, draw the next arrow down to customers. They are the ones that look after the customers, not you. You don't look after the customers. Your team looks after the customers. And there's all sorts of things we could say about that. But if you haven't trained them properly, they're not going to look after the customers properly. And so then draw a line from the top, from you underneath owner, down to point at customers. Now, if that circle is a 360-degree circle and you cut it in half like that, it's not going to be very efficient. You've truncated the cycle. So you spend all your day putting out fires and pacifying customers and making sure customers are looked after properly, and your team are out on the side there relaxing. They're probably out the back having smoko while you're sorting out the problems. So the 1 Minute Manager book comes to mind in that sense. So we don't want that to happen. And then the customers look after the business. You draw the arc around to point to the business. So there's a number of ways that the customers look after the business. The first one is that they come to you and buy stuff off you. They pay you money. They come back again and they tell their friends about you. And there's a whole lot of activity that we need to be engaged in to encourage that to keep happening. Okay, but a lot of it hinges on how well your team is looking after them. And then the business looks after you, so you can complete that cycle. Draw the arrow up to you again. So how does a business look after the business owner? Who's got an idea about that?
Anyone else want to chime in here? How does the business look after the business owner? You can hear some typing going on.
Lots of times it doesn't look after the business owner.
Money.
Well, that's right.
Money.
That's good, Catherine.
Yes.
It looks after us in a number of ways. But you see, and here's another thing, another action point from today. Revise your personal and business goals and do that thinking forward 5 years, and then chunk that down to where you want to be, what goals you want to be able to tick off in 12 months' time. That is a very simple but very powerful exercise to do. See, you're the skipper of that yacht and you want to know what the destination is. We had an interesting client. No, it wasn't one of my clients in the action network some years ago, 10 or more years ago, and the coach working with him was trying to extract some goals out of this guy, and all he could get out of him was, I want to buy a yacht. He had a reasonably good little business, but he needed to do a lot better. I want to buy a yacht. So the coach says, oh, you're into sailing. Where are you going to sail? You know, are you going to circumnavigate the globe? Are you going to sail over in the Greek islands or something in the Mediterranean? Where are you going to sail? The guy says, and he's a Brisbane guy, he says, Noosa. I said, what do you mean? What's the attraction at Noosa? And it took a few more questions, but finally the guy said, when I married my wife, my father-in-law stopped all communication with me. He hates me. He thinks I'm never going to amount to anything. He really didn't want his daughter to marry me. And he's retired, and he lives in a mansion up on the Sunshine Coast at Sunrise Beach, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. So when I've succeeded, I want to buy a yacht, and I want to sail past and give him the finger. So that is a negative motivation,
Yes.
but goals, for the most part, need to be positive motivations. And that's the other thing, having done the goals, you need to actually put what's the penalty if you don't achieve the goal, particularly for the 12-month goals.
Yes.
What are you going to do to penalise yourself if you don't achieve the goal? Yeah.
Steve, there's a question in here from Matt, because like part of this is actually changing the culture of the business, isn't it?
It is.
Because you as the owner may be stepping in and dealing with the customer problems and not allowing the team to do that. So you have to change the way you do things. And then the team had because there's an old saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Good old Peter Drucker. And we see that. You see it playing out in churches, you see it playing out in businesses, you see it playing out in families. So do you want to address the culture? And because now may be a time to actually be rethinking, what is the culture that I want to set in the business?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And again, if anybody would like a copy of the Action Coach Culture Statement, then shout out and we can get it to you. It has 14 points, but there's nothing magical about 14, but it will show you what I'm really talking about here. The culture it's really another word for your values. The culture of your business will be a direct reflection of your personal values. So that's where you start. You make a list of your values. What are the things that are non-negotiable for you that you want to have happening in your business? And it's things like community. You just think of the kind of headings first, and then having made a list of the headings, so to speak, then you can write a sentence or two about what you mean by that. So things like fun, communication, integrity, honesty. There's a whole list. I don't want to give you too many. You need to make up your own. It's all you often get confirmation of these by asking a couple of your clients. One of my clients, their value, their purpose statement for the business was honouring relationships. So there's two culture words anyway, honour and relationships. But they made that the purpose statement of their business. And I ended up meeting quite a few of their clients, and each one of them said, you know, Neil and John, you don't really need a contract with those guys. Their word's their bond, you know. I thought, wow, they got that right. So yeah, define the culture and go through it with your team, even if it's a team of one. Sit down together and work through and explain that this is the way you want people to behave while they're working for you. They might think of other things that they've noticed about you to be added to the list. So, yeah, that would be an excellent exercise to do. because what happens is people invent their own. Now, there was an acrostic about this that I saw years ago. UGR. People invent their own UGRs, unwritten ground rules. If you don't spell it out and remind them of it often enough, it's a good idea to do it up nicely and put it up on display, and then to look at it frequently and refer to it, not just leave it there collecting dust on the wall. Yeah, because people, if they're left in the dark, left to their own devices, they'll make up their own ground rules and they'll be unwritten, but there's no guarantee that they'll reflect what you want to have.
Yeah, so no, that's very good. Steve, I think there's another document that you want to take people through, but I'll just check, is there any questions that people have at this stage? Is anything that Steve has said, or there's something else on your mind that you want to make sure you ask Steve today? No, sounds like it's all good there, but no doubt something will come off. Okay, do you want me to bring up the other document that you sent me through?
Well, look, we've probably covered most of it, I think.
Yeah, okay.
In what we've done. So
Yes.
I want to leave time for any individual, for people to raise any individual challenges. But there was a couple of other things. I'd made some notes on that. Oh yeah, very quickly. One of the things that I saved off the web about 3 years ago, by the look of it, was about new research that has shocked scientists about how human emotion physically shapes reality. So it's just another way of emphasising the importance of positive emotions. There's quite a bit written about this, but the short version of it is that they discovered that through testing a number of individuals, individual emotions tighten our DNA. I guess that's not that surprising, but positive emotions loosen up our DNA. I think it was reading Carolyn Leaf that I first learnt that that our thoughts can actually turn genes on and off in our DNA. So that's the same type of thing. But our emotions, negative emotions, tighten our DNA and positive emotions loosen it. And that really defies the conventional laws of physics. So they were quite shocked about that. The second point is that human DNA shapes the behaviour of light photons that make up the world around us. That's where it really started to stretch my imagination, that human DNA controls or has an influence on the behaviour of light photons that make up the world around us. So they concluded that our emotions affect our DNA and our DNA affects the world around us. So, our DNA actually can change the physical world around us. So when I discovered that, it kind of answered the question that, I know so many people and they're extremely positive people. I've never had a negative person who anybody said this about, but you hear people say, oh, anything they touch turns to gold. And invariably, they are extremely positive people.
Yeah.
So that kind of explains that. The other thing that I think is quite relevant that I wanted to make sure that we covered is what we in action call the formula for change. So again, if you've got your writing pad there, otherwise you'll have to imagine this, but it's written like a mathematical, like an algebra thing, I suppose. So the formula for change is D multiplied by V, and then you put brackets around that bit, then a plus sign, and then the letters F and F for Fred and S for Sam, and then it has to be greater than sign, which is like a V lying on its side, has to be greater than R, the letter R for Roger. Now, would you like to know the code?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, this is where it really gets exciting. We'll deal with the R first. The R stands for resistance. No matter what change we're talking about, there will always be a degree of resistance. This is what we mostly ignore in ourselves and other people. We're trying to sell somebody something and they're resistant, but we don't ever think about how can I identify what the resistance is? Because if I identify what the resistance is, I can help the person to reduce the resistance so that they can make a decision. So the R is resistance. If we move across to the in the direction to the left, the F and S stand for two words, and they are very simple: first steps. That's what action do I need to take? What are the first steps? And a lot of sales processes have multiple steps. The first step might be make an appointment for a Zoom meeting, and we can talk more about it. The first step might be, well, you can think of something for your industry probably quicker than I can, but we need to actually know and have thought in advance. What is the first step that I want to take myself, or that I would like this person I'm trying to help take? Okay, so we move across to the other side, and the D and the V in brackets that have to be worked on as well. The D is dissatisfaction, because there's absolutely no need to change if I'm not dissatisfied.
So true.
I might be dissatisfied with my present accountant because he or she is asleep at the wheel, but I have a lot of resistance because I don't know any other accountants, and I know that they have a reputation for not being very helpful, talking in Swahili and charging you when you don't want to be charged. So I have to identify the dissatisfaction in myself, if it's me that I'm trying to change, or in the other person that I'm trying to help. And the more clarity about dissatisfaction, the better. See, and that the other simple exercise I get people to do, because oftentimes when you're asking people what they want, they'll start telling you what they don't want, because they know what they don't want, but they are very fuzzy about what they do want. So the simple technique for that is get a blank writing pad, draw a line down the center of the page. On the left side at the top, write don't want. On the right-hand side, write what I want. And don't worry about the what I want. Write down all the things that you don't want about that. It might be that you're looking for your ideal life partner. So you write down all the things you don't want. When you've done that, and finish that off first, then come back and line by line write, well, if I don't want that, what do I want? Oh, I want this. So you can progressively fill in the right-hand column, at which stage you cut off or tear off the left-hand column, and now you've got a description of what you want that you can begin to visualize and focus on. That just grew out of the dissatisfaction thing, because we know what we don't want. Now we've got to multiply the dissatisfaction. We've got to increase the dissatisfaction. If we can't increase it, then give up. We don't need to change yet. We've got to multiply that by vision, which I guess I've just covered in a way with that opposites exercise. Establish what it is that you do want, but not only what you want, but what that is actually going to mean for you. My vision is that when that happens, then my life will be enhanced in these ways. So identify the dissatisfaction, get present to it, even to the point of having to go get the tissue box because you bring yourself or your client to tears. one of my coaches used to achieve that quite often with his clients, getting them present to the dissatisfaction. And then focus on the vision, clarify that this is where the dream board thing is very handy. That's the vision. Identify the first steps. You don't necessarily have to know all the steps involved, but you do need to know the first one or two. And reduce the resistance. Get present to it and then reduce the resistance. And that's quite a fascinating formula, because you think back on all the change in your life and you'll find that that was working out in that change.
It's good, Steve. So we're starting to run out of time. We've got about 10 minutes, 9 minutes to go. So now is the time to be working on that, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is.
To actually get that, because we've got that, we seem to have that extra time at the moment to sit down and do that. We do have a question from Myrna, and I think it's interesting that people seem reluctant to sell at the moment. We've got lots of memes and quotes and videos of people putting stuff on Facebook or social media, but are people actually selling? And we still need to have a focus on selling at this time.
Yes.
How would you recommend that we change our mindset around that, Steve?
Well, I think it's very relevant now. That I'm yet to discover the marketing strategy that will magically bring the exact right types of client to a business owner waving their credit card or checkbook. It's all a case of testing and measuring. Obviously, some strategies work better than others, and we need to know through testing and measuring what works and what doesn't. But in all cases, the fundamental is that people do business with people. And so what I'm hearing from other coaches in Australia and New Zealand is we can't, well, it's difficult and in some cases impossible to actually drive and get face-to-face with people, but we can get face-to-face with them in a quite personal way, a one-on-one Zoom type or Facebook type meeting. And that, I think, is essential at a time like this. Do the whatever marketing strategy, send the emails and that type of thing, but follow up, particularly if you've got expressions of interest from people, follow up with a one-to-one personal confidential meeting. I think that's about the best I can do to answer that question.
So we've got another question here, is that are people buying at the moment?
Again, it's very patchy. A lot of people are buying. You need to think through with your product offering, what out of your product offering is relevant to people now that you could reasonably expect them to buy. See, I've been through this so many times with business owners because I'm meeting with business owners all the time. Oh, no, Steve, now's not a good time for coaching. And then we get something like this happen, and then they suddenly they watch the bank balance disappear, and they're ringing with an SOS, help, help. Well, there's been a few guys. One guy I coached after, it was 10 years later, 10 years after my first meeting with him, that he finally was nearly bankrupt, and his son-in-law told him he had to contact me. I've had any number of them that resisted and resisted and resisted for 5 years. Usually what happens is that a relative or somebody gets on their case and makes them do it. And one of the 5-year cases I'm thinking of was a computer shop, an IT business, and it had cost him his first marriage, and he'd married again, and his second wife, who was doing the admin work and the bookkeeping for the business, she actually gave him an ultimatum and said, if you don't get coaching, I'm leaving you. So I remember meeting him in a McDonald's, and his wife, meeting he and his wife, and even in the meeting, I run through it again, and she understands it fully, and women are good like that. And he's like, but look, we're so short of cash at the moment. And she just looked at him and glared and said, you want me? At which time he grabbed the.
They do
grabbed
that.
the form and signed it.
His level of dissatisfaction and yeah,
That's right.
you got to
He
hire.
was losing his vision
That's right.
of his wife.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly. Doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think this does come down to mindset though, because if you think people aren't buying at the moment, you're not going to be able to sell.
Oh, precisely.
But people are still buying. They're out there. They're spending money. They're doing all that. So it's your attitude there. And
Yeah,
another thing is
right.
you may need to change your product to the current market.
Yes.
So you may alter it around to something different. So
Well,
you need to
here's
be
a couple of,
ahead the
here's an
time.
example to help people a bit. One of my friends, he's not a client, he's a coffee club franchisee, and he's the cafe version, not the restaurant version. So he's had to either close the doors or just do takeaway. So the first week of that, he decided that he'd open until 7 p.m. For takeaway orders, and because people can order through these various delivery things now. And so he had a visit from the coffee club, one of the coffee club guys, you know, how did you go, Roger? And he quoted him his figure of what he'd turned over that week. And the guy nearly had apoplexy. He said, what? He said, that's 3 times the average of what other coffee clubs are doing.
Yeah.
Now, he said, when he was telling me this story, he said, so Steve, this week and from now on, I'm opening till 9 p.m.
Yes.
But we're closing between whatever it was, 1:30 or 2 o'clock and about 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because nobody's buying
No one's
coffee.
buying the time. So you need to make that adjustment.
My prophetic word over him was, I think by opening till 9 p.m, you're going to double your weekly sales.
Yeah.
That you've been doing.
Yeah.
And he's got that expectation.
It's being willing to make those changes at the moment and go that extra mile and to see what can be done. Steve, we do need to finish up, but there's another thing that you wanted me to share, and that's you have some coaching things available at this point in time. Oh,
yes.
Where did they go?
Yeah, have you got that other one? Well, that's coming up, guys. I've allocated 5 pro bono 1 hour long coaching sessions per week for anybody that would like to take advantage of those. Again, it's not hard sell. I have a history of giving back. What we'd talk about in that session is what is your major concern at the moment that you want help with. But we'd also put that in the context of some of the things that we've talked about here today.
Yeah, that's right. So that's good. Excellent. Okay, well, I'll put that up underneath this as well, and we'll put your link to your webpage and stuff like that, Steve. Go from there.
That's awesome.
Well, it's been a great section. Thank you, everyone who's been on. Is there any final questions? Myrna just did a Facebook Live talking about this very issue of we need to sell, and her phone's been running hot, saying
good on Myrna.
I'm making some sales at this time. So get out there. It's an opportunity to get some stuff going.
Yeah, I'd encourage people to get in touch with Myrna.
Yes.
Now's the time.
Yeah, and to get your vision board up and going.
Yes.
Hey, the other thing, Grant, are you still on or you've gone? Grant might have gone. Looks like he's gone. So tomorrow we have Grant Mason on, who's an insurance broker. So all your insurance issues are key to be reviewing and things at this time. So and there's some special things there to look at. So we'll be discussing that tomorrow at 12 p.m. Well, thank you so much, Steve. Thanks to all those that are on.
And a big thank you to you, Wes, for putting this on. Awesome.
No, it's good. It's good. So I'm glad you guys have benefit from it, and we'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye, everyone.